I don't want to be part of a European foreign policy.
The problem... But this is a dangerous fantasy. The idea that there's going to be a European Air Force, a European army, it is simply not true. The problem with people like Nigel Farage is they swing at windmills. They see conspiracies everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel Farage soon tells us that the moon landing was a fake, that Barack Obama isn't American, that Elvis isn't dead. You know, it is not going to...
Ah yes, the lovely conspiracy argument, one that the left engages in quite a lot recently. And the reason they brand something as a conspiracy is twofold. Number one, in order to make the people who are engaging in the argument to seem crazy, unhinged. This is a tactic that the USSR used to do to political dissidents. Obviously, they couldn't lock everyone up, so instead they would sometimes brand people that were against the main established party line as crazy, so that other people don't listen to them. It's like, why do you listen to this lunatic? The second reason why they brand it as a conspiracy theory is in order to try to censor it. There is the argument that the social media and some alternative press websites are engaging into dangerous conspiracy theory that can poison democracy. And as such, once something is branded as a conspiracy theory, it needs to be completely deleted from the public space. It's interesting to point out that branding something as a conspiracy theory is completely subjective. There is no council that casts a vote whether something is or isn't a conspiracy theory. It is usually done by the politician or the mainstream media. The word conspiracy theory itself has taken a turn. The original definition of conspiracy is a belief that some covert but influential group is responsible for an event. Basically, people getting together and conspiring. This is not something that's astonishing. It has happened throughout human history. It's probably happening now, and I'm pretty sure it will happen again. But for some reason, the language police managed to take over this word and change it into the idea that it's something akin to the moon landings, something akin to aliens and UFOs and, you know, absolutely ridiculous stuff like the lizard people and turning the frogs gay. Like, what if I were to tell you that the frogs were gay all along, huh? But anyway, moving on. So, people who are branded conspiracy theorists are to be deemed insane, not credible, and if possible, to be completely removed from the internet. And this tactic works. Like, you have useful idiots, like this gentleman over here. Now, a very angry hobbit is a person that I interact with on Twitter on several occasions. He is a person that's incredibly left-leaning, but with that said, he does seem to be unflinching, like, even in the face of evidence. Even when seeing this video, his mind just simply cannot grasp reality. He forms a roadblock in his mind that does not want to accept evidence. And just like him, there are many, many people like him, usually leaning on the left. Now, the interesting point is that throughout Brexit, this was actually a main concern that British people had. They did not want an EU army. They did not advocate for a United States of Europe, if you will. And this brought a lot of skepticism towards the EU. However, people that were the Remainers, they were saying that, no, this is absolutely lunacy, like you're pushing for conspiracy theories. And right after Brexit, I think it didn't even take a month or so that plans of an EU army started emerging. And now it's obviously something very vocal. It's something that Germany and France are advocating for it. And if you actually look at the history of the European Union, you will notice that this is a constant trend. The European Union started as a trade agreement, and you have Eurosceptics who were pointing out that it's going to lead to a lot of centralized power, it's going to lead to people that are trying to do a power grab that's not democratic, and time again they were called crazy, they were called lunatics, and rather than address their arguments, people try to discredit them. To make it seem like everything that they say is false, so people shouldn't listen to them. And today you can see that the European Union is definitely not a trade agreement, and it is moving towards the consolidation of a state. In fact, the funny thing is that during the Olympics, you could definitely see that the European Union was almost posed as a country. They were showing the medals from every single nation in the world, and the European Union was deemed as a nation, symbolizing that that's how they wanted to be represented as such. And this is not something that's happening with the agreement of the people in Europe. I mean, maybe the people in Europe do want to move towards United States of Europe, but we don't know because there is no such referendum. The people of Europe are never asked on these matters. Like, do you think it's a good idea to have an EU army that's possibly going to be in the leadership of Germany? Heck knows. I mean, there was no referendum based on this that I was invited to. There were no votes being cast regarding this. I assume that the answer is no, because the people in charge of the European Union kept this project hidden while the Brexit referendum took place, probably assuming that a lot of British people were definitely against it. So why am I really against the EU army? Well, several reasons. Number one, taxes. Like, this is going to cost money. The European Union does not produce money. It taxes the member states. The second reason is, like, why would we even need an army? Like, we already are in NATO. We already have a military agreement that has guaranteed peace amongst the nations within the EU. There hasn't been a world war between two major European superpowers since World War II. Number three, what exactly do you want to do with that army? Like, once you have it, you need to actually deploy it somewhere. Where are you going to deploy it? The Middle East? America is there. Africa, China is there. Against EU member states that want to leave the empire of good? Well, maybe that's why I don't want an army. And let's not kid ourselves, this army is not for defensive purposes. Like, there is absolutely no way that the economically collapsed Russia is going to invade Europe anytime soon. Speaking of conspiracy theories, it's more likely the aliens are going to invade Europe rather than Russia attacking. Like, Godzilla is probably going to rise from the oceans and attack Europe. That's more of a possibility. And let's talk about these events that Europe is under attack. Oh my god, what do we do without the EU army? Well, member states have armies. You can have a union of armies led by NATO, and we're going to deal with that threat. You don't need to have a EU army. And not to mention, who is going to join the EU army? A lot of people are asking that. I honestly think that the recent wave of migrants are the ones that are going to join the EU army. Like, think about it. Being a soldier means that you don't really need any qualifications. You just need to have a strong body, the good physique, and you're going to get some really nice money in order to join that army. Now, you know, if I'm going to say my conspiracy theory, which seems that every time I engage in conspiracy theories, they come true. I think that people who don't have any attachment to any member state in the European Union joining a EU army is going to be a little problematic. Like, you get people from the Middle East or Africa that don't really give a shit about any nation state within the EU or the culture of Europe, and you're going to have them joining a European army. It's going to be an army of mercenaries, isn't it? Don't you think that's a little bit dangerous? Like, do you really want that? Usually armies are built out of patriots, like people who actually care about the land that they are supposed to defend. But instead, we're probably going to see an army made out of the refugees that have joined Europe. This would be the worst case scenario. Now, again, I don't want to say that I have any evidence of this, but I think it's going to be extremely highly likely that this is the result, because most of these migrants, they don't have jobs. They don't manage to find a place of work, and in the future, they're going to be desperate looking for cash. And this is going to be a very good employment opportunity for them, where you don't even need to know the language. They're probably going to have like an instructor that speaks their native tongue, and you know, they're going to be made into regiments and battalions, and that's going to be the EU army. A foreign army, by the way. Led by who? France and Germany. Wow, amazing, amazing. Right. Now, I'm not the only one that's being concerned about this. The US president decided to tweet about this nonsense. Emmanuel Macron suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the US, China, and Russia. But it was Germany in World War I and II. How did that work out for France? They were starting to learn German in Paris before the United States came along. Pay for NATO or not. And this, by the way, I've called this. Like I've called this since 2 years ago, that the reason the Western nations don't pay for NATO anymore and they're neglecting their obligations is because they want to build a EU army. Why pay for two things? Eventually they will drop out of NATO. It makes absolutely no sense to still be within NATO if you're going to have your own military alliance. On trade, France makes excellent wine, but so does the United States. The problem is that France makes it very hard for the US to sell its wines into France and changes big tariffs where the US makes it easy for French wines and charges very small tariffs. Not fair, must change. This is something that Trump constantly points out. It's like, people want globalism, people want free trade. But why is it that free trade is always a deficit for his country? Like the Europe, they don't want tariffs. They want to sell everywhere. They want to export their shit everywhere. But the moment you put a tariff on them, you will see American leftists freak out. Like, I'm from Europe. I should be happy that I can, export shit from my country to America with little tariffs. But it doesn't make sense that the left in America, every single time Trump talks about raising tariffs for Europe or for China, the left is the one that freaks out. It's like, oh, you want globalism, but it's not equality, is it? And furthermore, the problem is that Emmanuel suffers from a very low approval rating in France. 26% unemployment rate of almost 10%. He was just trying to get onto another subject. By the way, there is no country more nationalist than France. Very proud people, and rightfully so. Make France great again. I love his motto, make France great again. But yeah, no, he is absolutely right. Now, I don't think that the reason Emmanuel Macron is talking about the EU army because of his approval rating. Like, this was a plan that was in motion for years. You can't, people like that useful idiot, Angry Hobbit, he doesn't realize that this actually takes a long time to discuss. There is a lot of logistics involved. There is a lot of money involved. You have to talk about who's going to fund this. And this actually takes years of deliberations. It's not something that Macron woke up yesterday and said, you know what, we need a European army. Yeah, let's go for it. Make France weak again. No. And yeah, it's interesting that the United States president gave that roasting to Emmanuel Macron. And of course, the relationships between US and Europe are going to worsen if Europe actually has an army and decides to deploy it somewhere. There is literally nowhere in the world where you can deploy that shit without pissing someone off. Absolutely no one. And this is obviously future instability to world peace. There is no reason why the EU needs an army. None whatsoever. I am full-heartedly against it. And the main scary thing about it is that we, the people of Europe, can do nothing to stop it. We can't stop Article 11 and Article 13 from going through. This definitely seems like a bigger plan and something that they have tried to push for a while, and I don't think anything is going to convince them to stop. This is most likely why they were absolutely livid that Britain is leaving the EU, and it's why they want the divorce bill. They want to pay for their little army project. And hopefully they will get the no-deal Brexit. Hopefully other nations are going to see the light and they're going to move away from this cancerous thing. I'm all for a united Europe. In trade, in a military alliance, and what have you. But it has to be through a democratic establishment. The EU is not democratic. The people don't have a say in what's happening inside the European Union. And there needs to be a new institution created. This one needs to be wiped away by history.
This is a dangerous fantasy. The idea that there's going to be a European Air Force, a European army, it is simply not true. The problem with people like Nigel Farage is they swing at windmills. They see conspiracies everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel Farage soon tells us that the moon landing was a fake, that Barack Obama isn't American, that Elvis isn't dead. It is not going to happen.
But are we going to have a choice on that?
No, I think it's no is the answer.
So are you saying that if 27 countries push ahead and form a European army, that you as Prime Minister will keep us out of it?
Yeah, there's not going to be a European army. But look, let me explain.
But there is going to be a European army.
No, there isn't. Let me explain.
Hang on, Ed. Last year, I was on with Nick Clegg. He said my talk of a European army was a dangerous fantasy. We now have the bosses of the European Union, including the French President, saying they want to build a European army. You can shake your head all you like, but actually this is happening. And if it did come to a European army, would that be enough for you to give people a referendum?
I'm not going to have a European army, but let me explain. I think
whether that's a yes or a no. Are we seeing the first steps towards a European army?
No, the European army is entirely hypothetical.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting to see that there's a worry there could be a separate EU army in some way.
If things go Jean-Claude Juncker's way, this will be the future of European defense. In an interview, the president of the EU Commission called for a European army. It's not a new idea, and it has many supporters in Germany, even in the defense ministry.
That's the reality. So, second thing, defense union, finally take the decision and start first of all the proposals from the Commission and then further on.
Quand je regarde le monde où nous vivons, l'Europe est de plus en plus fracturée. Quand je regarde le monde où nous vivons, vous avez des puissances autoritaires qui réémergent et qui se réarment aux confins de l'Europe. Nous sommes bousculés par les tentatives d'intrusion dans le cyberespace et l'intervention d'ailleurs dans notre vie démocratique de plusieurs. Nous devons nous protéger à l'égard de la Chine, de la Russie et même des États-Unis d'Amérique. Quand je vois le président Trump annoncer il y a quelques semaines le fait qu'il sorte d'un grand traité de désarmement qui avait été pris, je le rappelle, après la crise des euromissiles au milieu des années 80, qui avait frappé l'Europe. Qui en est la victime principale? L'Europe et sa sécurité. On ne protégera pas les Européens si on ne décide pas d'avoir une vraie armée européenne.
Wir haben große Fortschritte bei der strukturierten Zusammenarbeit im militärischen Bereich erreicht. Das ist gut und wird ja auch hier weitestgehend unterstützt. Aber wir sollten, das sage ich sehr bewusst auch aus der Entwicklung der letzten Jahre, wir sollten an der Vision arbeiten, eines Tages auch eine echte europäische Armee zu schaffen.
This is a dangerous fantasy. The idea that there's going to be a European Air Force, a European army, it is simply not true.
But there's not going to be a European army.
The European army is entirely hypothetical.
Auch eine echte europäische Armee